Craveable Podcast, Season 2, Episode 7, Ladies in the Kitchen and Ben.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the Craveable Podcast, where real matters. We're your hosts, Katie and Ben, and the show is brought to you by Fossil Farms. So today, once again, we are so very lucky to be joined by a special guest, Chef Bianca Concepcion of Fossil Farms. And today's episode is Season 2, Episode 7, raptly titled, Ladies in the Kitchen, open parentheses, and Ben, close parentheses. Ben, how do you feel to be joining us here today?
That's fine. I still have my long hair. I kind of fit the bill for now. Getting a haircut on Saturday. So if you're watching this on YouTube, next video I'll have short hair. I'll be very cute.
Yeah.
Tur.
Well, I do want to point out that this isn't, you guys aren't going to be listening to this for a little while, but we are recording this at the end of International Women's Month. So, felt it was very fitting and super excited to have Chef Bianca back on here. And I'm going to try not to, your shirt is like blinding me, Ben. I don't know if it's the brightness of the colors or like them two together, but
it's a little trippy.
It's lifting my spirits.
It's like making me dizzy a little bit. So
I love that
just
about
don't
this.
stare directly at it.
Don't look directly at the shirt.
I'm glad I'm here to moderate, to keep you guys on track.
Actually, I called you our mediator before, and Bianca was like,
Yeah.
are we going to
I was
fight?
like,
And
are
I was
we-
like, I hope
Are we going to
not.
go into
I hope
battle?
not.
Ben is not going to be a good mediator.
No.
That's the case.
Instigator.
Instigator.
Yeah, that's a good.
Ben is
That's a
great
good way
at
to put it.
But no, yeah, I mean, Bianca is a great example of women in the kitchen. She is a woman.
She's an international woman.
She leads the kitchen here at Fossil Farms.
Yeah.
I asked Bianca earlier, sorry, Chef Bianca, I'm going to let you have your moment here. But
Eventually.
I went to the kitchen before. I said, so Bianca, what are we going to talk about today? And she's like, well, I thought like we already had, I was like, well, we're talking about women in the kitchen. So what do you want to talk about? And she's like, slicing potatoes on a mandolin, beautiful thin. And she's like, well, I'm a woman and I'm in the kitchen. So I think we're all set. And I was like, that's great. You're so right, Bianca.
Is there a
it's point
focus on
blank.
the conversation that you guys
Not
want
really,
to have?
no.
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 Okay.
We kind of just
talk
yeah, we're just,
experiences.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know. We kind of touched on this when we had Bianca on last time, but we were talking more about trends in the industry. And I know wasn't really non sequitur, that's not the right word, but one of the trends I wanted to bring up that I saw was women in the industry and basically the rise of women as entrepreneurs, business owners, mixologists, winemakers, things like that. And how that's a really exciting thing because, and this is something kind of silly that I was thinking about, but everything I say is silly. I think it's interesting that, kind of a woman being in the kitchen, right, is like an insult because you have that old schooly, like, oh, a woman belongs in the kitchen, right? But today, in all these nice restaurants and professional kitchens, they're all male dominated. So it's almost like it's a strange juxtaposition to it's like a woman would be proud to be in this kitchen and run this kitchen, right? And then you have that antiquated insult of like, oh, go in the kitchen and
Make a sandwich, sort of, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about that? Sorry. Oh, but
Sorry.
This is fun. You can laugh on the podcast. It's open-ended.
I had to laugh a little bit.
It's funny.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think in general, and this has been happening for so many years, that it has been predominantly a male-dominated industry, even still today. Or you see a lot of female chefs as pastry chefs. I feel like that's where people tend to end up going that kind of route. I mean, at least for me, when I was in culinary school, you would see like the culinary arts students, and mostly men, some women, and then you look over to the baking and pastry side, and there was just all women, and then a couple of guys. It's kind of crazy.
Like the opposite. I mean,
Yeah.
that's, it's funny because I didn't go to like traditional culinary school, but and I'm sure I touched on this in that episode about trends, but the professional kitchen that I worked in for much of my time there, I was the only woman on like the hotline.
Yep.
And I was the only woman. I started on Garde Manger, and it was just me and my two buddies there. Wilfredo, Billikeen, love forever.
Shout out.
They're not going to be listening, but love those guys. And then moved over to the hotline. I was still the only woman there, and the only other women were in pastry with this one guy, Jack, who was awesome. Jack, love you, man, if you're listening. He's also probably not listening, but he was awesome. He was Australian, and that was what it was. It was like exactly what you described. It's like all the dudes and me, and then all the ladies and Jack.
Yeah.
That was like a microcosm of what
That
you
was
literally just described.
basically my experience too with like restaurant and lifestyle was just mostly men, and then I'd be like that one woman in the kitchen, and I just like
I'm here,
I'm here, guys, But I don't know if that like pushed me to want to be more than just a line cook, because I mean, we all, like you said, you started out over Garmin J and then worked your way into the hotline. That was the same thing for me. Worked my way, but I just kept on pushing and showing that. And then it moved me into like a sous chef role. Then eventually it moved me into a CDC role. Then and now I'm here and I'm an executive chef.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's nice to see that like gradual progression throughout the years.
For sure.
Because like years ago, I honestly, like I'm not going to say like I thought about stepping away from cooking. I definitely had that, those thoughts, just because of how like rough it could be in the kitchen. And it was never made easy for me personally, like through my experience. I mean, I would be the first person in the kitchen and the last person to leave. And in the eyes of some of the cooks, that still wasn't enough.
Ugh.
So it would,
let's lean in on that a little bit.
Yeah.
What are some of the situations you would run into as a woman with the pushback from the guys? Because there's probably specific instances that you knew that they were doing it because you were a girl.
Definitely, like the respect, and also cultural. I think also they're like, depending, on the kitchen. Me being mostly from like working in New York City, like it's, definitely Hispanic dominated.
Yeah, Latin American bravado. We've had this conversation.
And in some of their cultures, women aren't really seen as that, like, you should be here. You should be really at home taking care of kids.
Yeah.
Taking care of the home, not really having that kind of power position by no means. And I don't know, that I felt the need to like push out of that boundary and show myself that, yeah, I could do this. I could do this, just as good as any guy out there.
Better.
Better. I think.
Let's be honest. We've had enough of your cooking, and I've had enough of other people's.
Oh yeah, Bianca.
Better than most.
Bianca all day. I think that's I've always been told. So I like only worked in the one kitchen, right? Pretty much. And I was always told by all my coworkers, they're like, you are so lucky. Like this is where 90 acres matter. I was like this stunning, gorgeous, like copper panel, open kitchen, windows everywhere, looking out on the farm. And they'd be like, you have no idea the kitchens that we used to work in. So like beautiful environment regardless. Gorgeous place to work. And I was super lucky. But hearing you say that made me realize something that I can't believe. I thought I would never say this far removed from the kitchen. This is something I'm now appreciating of it. It may have been mostly men, but what it certainly also was like a wonderful mix and blend of cultures and nationalities, and it was all different people. And that was one thing I never sensed if there was any kind of animosity or dissent for like, cultural or like, race or any type of reasons like that. I never knew of it. We all kind of, yes, I had very many hard times, but when we were all kind of just meshing together, we were just, loud, messing around, cooking, whatever we were doing, having a good time. Ben's laughing at me. We rough horsed, Ben. But no, so I feel very lucky.
You what?
Is that not the phrase?
It's not, but we're moving on quickly.
Anyways,
I'm gonna do another thing in post about this. Rough housing.
Correct.
Rough housing.
There we go.
I always do that on this one.
Started in St. Louis.
Full callback. Black walnuts, olives. What's the difference? Anyway, so I feel very lucky for that, and that's actually an interesting thing that I never would have thought as a challenge.
I felt like when I was in Providence, like it was definitely
Rhode Island.
Yeah, Providence, Rhode Island, guys, for those who
Then don't laugh at
don't
me.
know.
There's more than one Providence.
If they're only listening, they don't know I'm laughing, so you're
Okay,
calling
but
yourself
stop.
out.
No. All right, go ahead, Bianca.
So I felt like when I was in Providence, there was definitely more of a diverse community of people. So I definitely got to see like a good blend up there. But so I like worked at a bakery, mostly working on like the culinary side of things, and eventually dabbled in a little bit of baking. But it was definitely an environment that was like uplifting because there was
That's
more
awesome.
women in the kitchen. They even dabbled with some of the savory things as well. Like we would collaborate on different things. So it was definitely uplifting to be in that sort of environment.
Mhm.
And eventually, I mean, I moved from Providence and then back to Jersey and then started working in New York City. And that's when I started to get introduced to like
Yeah,
different scenarios
right.
of the kitchen.
Now, when you were in culinary school, I don't know if this was made clear, maybe it was, but I was too busy thinking about phrases I wanted to flounder on. Were you in the bakery program or the culinary arts program?
Culinary arts, yeah,
Okay.
strictly culinary arts. I mean, we did have a couple of
Of course.
what we call labs that had like baking and pastry. So it was like the 101, and then like sophomore year was advanced, and that was pretty much all that I had done in culinary school. I did a 4-year program too.
Yeah,
So once we like moved into our junior senior year, it was mostly like business oriented.
right. It's interesting that you had such minimal, well, at least from your perspective, minimal baking training, because you do happen to make the best biscuits I've ever eaten in my life.
And cinnamon rolls.
I
I gotta.
yeah.
Yeah,
Take a breath. Those
definitely.
biscuits are
TJ took
crazy.
a deep breath of biscuits.
I can't take all that.
Crazy.
Definitely can't take all that credit. My wife she's
She's
she was a
amazing.
baker.
True.
We met in culinary school, and she wanted to go into baking and pastry, but program was like way at its capacity.
Oh no.
But I mean, everything happens for a reason. So I'm glad we were in the same culinary class because we met each other.
There you go.
But I'd like to give her credit because she's the one that like showed me and given me recipes
How to make
and
those
stuff
biscuits?
and how to make
Whew.
biscuits and doughs and all this stuff. And
You
I'm
could have
like,
stopped at she's the one. 'Cause we know she is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
you're
good.
deeply in
But
love
I
with her, and we love that.
I would like some
Yeah.
biscuits straight from Elky's hands. I would like to see how good those are.
It's crazy. Like, you think mine are good? Hers are
Are
extremely
you serious?
And she's never
I
made
don't
them
know,
for us.
it's
That's
like-
so
Coming
weird.
over.
That's weird, isn't it?
This is insane.
This
Weird how
is
they've
a
never been made.
definitely a moment to be like, Elkie, you got to make some.
Okay, if you're listening, I'll pay for biscuits.
To touch on culinary school, when you were in school, obviously most people are your age, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, I think maybe it's one of those generational things. Like, you're working with people who are
Mhm.
different mixed people,
Sure.
mixed backgrounds, et cetera,
Yeah.
guys, girls. And then
There
when
was
you went into the kitchens and you're dealing with like older men who've been in the industry, was there a starker difference of how you were treated in the kitchen by those guys?
Definitely. Especially if they're grandfathered into the place and I'm just starting out. And, then that becomes even more of a challenge because it's like the respect that they don't know you don't know them, but you want to be able to be in this power role. And so it's like giving some sort of authority. It's like it was sometimes nearly impossible, which made it somewhat of a struggle. Luckily, though, I had wonderful chefs that I worked with that, wanted to give women that power and be in this kind of position as a sous chef or a CDC or even executive chef. Like, they were so supportive of that. So if something had gone wrong, which I never felt like I never wanted to go out of the way to be like, hey, so this is what happened with this cook. I don't, they would do their best to try to coach them and then coach me into like having those conversations as well. But definitely it's one of those things that it was always a challenge because you don't want to like, and I don't
Rock
want
the
to,
boat?
yeah, no, it's so like
Be
I don't want to
honest.
use any sort of like foul language or anything, but
we can bleep it out.
so
Be
like
honest.
if you're too nice to someone,
Mhm.
they'll
Oh,
take
I get
advantage
it.
of you.
Yeah.
They'll walk all over you,
Yeah.
right? But if you're
A B.
too aggressive,
Yeah.
you're a bitch.
Yeah.
That's the reality
100%.
of it. So there's no like, but if it's the way I've seen it is like, okay, if a male chef is nice, but then also kind of gives that aggressive side, like, to put people in their place, or, they're just like, nothing's phased. Like, it's just, oh, okay, that's just chef,
Yeah.
whatever. It's
Yeah,
another day.
I've experienced that before. I'm like,
Yeah.
yo, did you just say that? Like, what? Like, I was just trying to say, I just put the salad up.
Yeah.
And now you need to, it's like, it gets snapped so
Yeah.
hard. I'm like, did I apologize for that later? Like, no, the answer is no. I remember when I first started, shortly before I was for a little while, the only woman on the line. I think I was still in Garbage Day, and the head meat cook was this woman out of Colorado school. Her name was Karen. She was like super pretty, very petite, blonde, and she kicked ass over there.
Mhm.
Like busy Saturdays, head meat cook, just like sweating. Oh, sorry. Bleep that out.
That was the first F-bomb
Like
drop.
perfect
Continue.
temps every time. Like I was just in awe. I was like,
Mhm.
you are my hero. Like I just thought it was the most badass thing in the entire world. Like so cool.
Mhm.
And like I remember that and just being super impressed. And yeah, it's interesting, what you said about like being nice. I mean, I remember there was this guy who worked on meat side, but was going to come over to fish side, and pretty much everyone I worked with went to culinary school.
Yeah.
And I had been doing like veg, basically sides and sauces for the dishes next to the head fish cook that was, what I had gone up to from Garbage Day. And then this kid went on vacation or whatever. And while he was gone, for whatever reason, it was like time for me to learn how to cook fish. And so this kid, Peter, who was super nice, he was cooking fish while I was on veg. He was showing me how to cook fish, and our CDC was like showing me how to cook fish. Like, you do this and baste, and this, you'll get this crispy skin and this and that, and chicken in the water, because we did chicken too. And I will never forget, this kid came back from vacation and was so mad because I hadn't gone to culinary school.
Yeah.
So he was like so mad that I was on the line cooking fish, like before him.
Mhm.
We literally, it was like we were children, honestly. Like we would then try to trade off, and it'd be like, this is so embarrassing to say on this podcast.
I can't wait. I'm so
like
excited.
whoever got in first would like start to unpack like the fish side stuff, not the veg stuff, right? It's
Mhm.
like I'd get in, I would pull a fish from the ice, and like I would start to load, and he'd be like all mad whenever he got in, he'd pull the veg, or like he'd get in, he'd pull a fish, and I'd be like, yes, I'm on veg tonight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like this aggressive rivalry, because he like and I was like good at it, and he hated it. And then eventually the chef was like, you guys need to relax. Stop this. You're going to do it for one whole weekend, and then you're going to do it for one whole weekend,
Yep.
and you're going to stop because you're being children.
Mhm.
And we were like, fine. And of course it worked out. But I thought that was interesting, is like me, who didn't go to culinary school, someone who did was like, why is she?
I can
this?
understand that though.
Yeah.
I get it in that perspective.
I'd probably
I've
be
had,
the same way if I was in.
I've had
obviously.
this like issue with like, and this is going to go into the topic of like pay, right?
Yeah.
So I had an experience in a place in the West Village, and I overheard a
What was the place
conversation.
called? Just kidding. I'm not doing that.
It's not open anymore, so it's fine.
So then you can call them
No,
out.
stop.
It'll be hilarious.
No, I can't do that.
You're a good person, better than me.
But so I was working brunch. I was like, we're slammed with brunch, and then finally things died down. I kind of overheard a conversation with like another line cook. Now this is a tiny kitchen,
Yeah.
so you can overhear anything. And they were talking about what they were getting paid, and I said, "Oh, what? Like, you're pretty much getting paid the same amount, and you don't have any sort of experience.
formal training.
You're very green, and I have all this experience, but what?"
Yeah.
So I kind of was just like, you know what? It's fine. You're going to just deal with it, and maybe I'll have this conversation with the chef, the next day, because he wasn't there. And the next day, he immediately came up to me. He's just like, "Oh, well, can I talk to you outside?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." Yeah, so then I heard about a conversation about, what someone was making, and, immediately it was like, "Okay, here's a raise." And I was like, "What?"
Okay.
Like, you're just giving me a raise because I overheard a conversation about, and now you're worried that I might leave.
How undervalued were you
Yeah,
going
it's
in?
like-
is
it's
my
like, were
immediate
you-
question.
Yeah,
Is
it
it-
was.
you
I
can
felt
do
Hindsight,
that-
right? The
doing
stuff
that
we
until
wish
you
we knew
notice.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Sorry for talking over.
No, it's okay. It's just like, it's like he's just doing that, hoping you don't notice, like knowing that you deserve more. Like, and then when
Yeah,
it becomes
I
a
mean,
problem, he's
I
like,
wasn't stupid, but I also needed the job, so I need to keep it.
Thank you for the
I
raise.
was like, I was like, all right, well, I mean, I expressed my feelings, of course, and he was understanding of it, but still, like, always, that has always stood with me. It's just like, I know my worth, and if that's like something that,
That rubs you the wrong. That rubs.
it
Yeah,
just,
that's fine.
and to see where I've come from to like now, it's definitely like like I've said, everything happens for a reason. So, I mean, I'm grateful for my experience through the years.
Yeah. I think it's interesting how you mentioned how you worked with some great chefs and, you kind of came up and graduated through the positions to where you are today. And, you never considered, leaving. And I think it's interesting. I feel like I was in a very good environment as well. My chef, David Felton, love you, chef, was amazing, amazing mentor along with my CDC and my Sue. I mean, great people, great teachers. And I definitely believe that if I had wanted to stay and grow, that I would have absolutely had the opportunity. I mean, I remember there was one time I sat down with chef, because I was kind of thinking, like, is this the life I want,
Mhm.
like, for the rest of my life?
Yeah.
And I kind of sat down with him and I was like, this feels like a lot. And he's like, it's a lot. And I'm like, it's just like all the time
Mhm.
and like late. He's like,
Yeah.
that's what it is. And he point blank said to me, he was like, listen, like, if your end goal isn't be the chef, be a chef, be an executive chef, you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's kind
I remember
Sure.
that in culinary school too.
Yeah.
Like someone, I think it was like Garmin J or something like that. But the instructor was just like, I'm going to guarantee this, but maybe out of this whole class, only 2 of you guys will become executive chefs. The rest of you guys, you're probably going to move on to front of the house or just completely change professions in general. And he kept it real with us. And
how big was the class? If you don't mind me asking.
I think it was like 25
Yeah.
of us.
Have we all had the same conversation? I had that when I asked my professor about doing a PhD. And he was like, of these 42 of you,
Yeah.
if you did a PhD program, may get through it. And it's for history, so what do you get to do with that? And I was like, well, leave this office. I'm out. Following my passions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I'm here talking to these two beautiful ladies, so
Oh,
thanks,
Ladies in the
Professor
kitchen.
Brown.
And-
You're not listening either. Howard G.
You
Brown,
don't know
he's the
what
man.
he or she's doing now.
He's so cool. Love him.
Yes, I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think there are hard things a lot of us have been through. I think I know, and I said this before, I'm probably repeating myself, but I know when I was in the kitchen and, basically hanging with the guys, dealing with the guys,
Mhm.
I definitely became my edges were a lot rougher. Not just my
Yeah.
edges. I mean, I was adapting basically to the situation that I was in, where it's like, try to harden those feelings, don't be insulted at the joke that's like actually super insulting and hurtful,
Right.
and just, come back and clap back and insults and
Mhm.
quips. And so like that would bleed into my personal life. And my mom would be like, you're like very mean lately. And I'd be like, I know I am.
Do something.
Yeah. No, seriously, it was like sad. It was like during that time, but it was almost like an unintentional survival technique,
Yeah.
because it was like, what do? I sit here and I tear up and I cry, or I just like,
Yeah.
tighten up and fight back.
It definitely, like, this industry will put some tough skin on you for sure. You kind of have to. You kind of have to.
What are you laughing at, Ben?
I'm laughing because we're not kind of like getting at the meat of it. Is that
What's
you
the meat?
guys, you're
Oh.
calcifying your emotions because you were abused.
Sheesh.
Here we go, Ben, with the A word.
Am I wrong? No. And I understand the justification. We've all done that. Everybody's been in a job and they're like, I just need to suck it up. But I think that's kind of tantamount to the things that people complain about the industry, is that there is a lot of taking advantage of people and a lot of abuse, be it physical, emotional,
Mental.
mental. you know.
mental abuse
Yeah.
for real, man. I mean, and I think I was going to say that, like, well, I have not a ton. Like I said, I worked in such a great environment. Honestly, it was really like, probably the stuff I went through is like just kiddie stuff compared to half the stuff that goes on in the industry. But Ben, jeez.
I don't want you to
Foul line.
justify the abuse you went through.
I'm just saying, I had a great environment. What I was going to say is, like, there are these couple like little things I went through and experienced, but what I think, and I'm sure you've had many more given everything and your longer time in the industry, but what I think is that, and I'm hopeful that the industry is starting to change. And I mean, I'm seeing more and more, I'm not really directly immersed in it so much anymore, but I am seeing more and more female chefs and business owners, and kind of just like that article I read, made it seem. And I know even Fossil Farms as a company posted about, for International Women's Month, just a couple posts about like really neat, like, okay, here's this female owner of, a whole animal butcher shop. And here's this female chef who just opened this. And, there's a restaurant that reached out to us, that I've been speaking with, the place 140 Kitchen in, upstate New York, where this woman, Shauna, is the executive chef, and she's killing it with this like awesome kind of like Asian fusion steakhouse feel, but casual menu. And I'm just looking on Instagram, and I'm just like, you're killing it. This is so cool. And so I love that. I'm kind of getting a vibe that the industry is changing. Maybe that's just me looking in from the outside. What do you think?
Yeah, women are becoming more empowered to be in these roles.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, like I felt the need to work 10 times harder and be there earlier than everyone else to get everything set up to show that I'm dedicated to what I'm doing. So it developed a good work ethic for me.
For sure.
I wasn't that I was trying to step over anyone's toes, but I was just trying to show that I could do it.
Yeah. You make me feel like I have to prove myself. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to prove myself.
Yeah.
Do you think that some of those guys who are kind of giving you flack, let's call it, not to be confused with flax, do you think they kind of had the opinion of like they get there and you're setting up that they're like, oh, like suck up, or like, what does she think? She's trying to make us look bad. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like, I don't know if, I don't think I've ever had anyone approach me about that, for sure.
Yeah, but just maybe that's what
I'm sure that they probably thought that, probably.
It's like, what do you want me to do? You're gonna kind of like make it seem like I can't be here and then expect me to what? Like roll over? Like you said, like be docile and be considered a non-threat and non-talented.
That is the expectation from them, and hence why they push it, because they're open to push you out. And then your pushback is the right answer. But at the same time, you kind of put yourself in the position they do, which is to take it.
Yeah, it's like, okay.
The abuse the industry serves.
Yeah.
And it's all part of the same thing. You can't separate them. They're intertwined, but.
Yeah. I mean, it's going back to like what I was saying before. It was, for me, honestly, I lost my train of thought.
It's all right.
Sorry.
We do that a lot in this podcast. I also say things that are really incorrect, like rough horsing. And then we're talking about walnuts, and I started talking about olives. What else have I said, guys?
This isn't helping her.
Nope, lost it. It's gone. Right. It'll come back to me.
But no, like I said, I'm very detached from the intricacies of, kitchens nowadays. But, Ben and I do look into restaurants, butcher shops, retailers, small charcuterie stores, things like that. And from that view, I do kind of feel like I see a bit of a shift. I wonder I can't imagine there's much of a change to the busy restaurant Friday, Saturday night push post-pandemic. You know what I mean? I want in my head it to be like no screaming and like everyone's nice and happy, but I know that like
that's not realistic.
Not happening.
It's not realistic.
That won't change.
No. But there's there's a fun in that. It's for me, it's kind of like a love-hate, and sometimes it's like you're going through that push and it's insane and it's hard and you're sweating and you burn yourself and, you cut yourself earlier and you're killing yourself, and then you get through it. And it's like exhilarating and you feel so good. And then you do it all over again. And you do it all over again and you put out amazing dishes, and it's a great feeling. And I'm so glad to see many more women coming into that space and dominating that space. And I'm so glad that we get to share the office, the building, our lives, our job with one of these wonderful women, Bianca.
Oh.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
We appreciate you.
Do you have any closing remarks?
Yeah, I guess to other women out there, like know your self-worth and know that you can, as long as you set your mind to it, and this goes for any profession, just make sure that, you keep pushing to what you deserve, know what you can get out of this. And yeah, that's pretty much what I got.
If you can dream it, you can do it.
Yep.
Anyway, guys, thanks for listening to our wonderful episode, Ladies in the Kitchen and Ben. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, tell us how great we are, how much we stink, either or, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for stopping by, San Diego.